Yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Shrikant, and I come from the pro development background. So in this presentation, which we are talking about from the lean startup perspective, how to accelerate the way the existing product development can happen. So we'll be talking about that. So let me just share my screen for that.
We see the whole screen. There we go. There's
Yeah.
your presentation.
Yeah. Can you see? I hope you can see my screen.
Looks good.
Yeah. Cool. So, so generally, as we talk about this startups, it comes about the product development implicitly. There may be things around. I mean, whether the startup is a product market fit, and then basically from that onwards, there is a continuous development from the product side point of view. So, so where it may mean that from the lean startup point of view that it is more specifically towards startups, but then there are challenges from the existing product development side as well, where the lean startup movement can be really helpful. And that is where which we'll be talking about in today's presentation. So if we talk about the product challenges, product development challenges broadly, there are two parts to it. One is uh, one is basically the build, like you may want to conceptualize the product and then you want to build it. From the technology point of view, as we have moved a lot further, and there are a lot of technological advancements happening every now and then. Uh, it, it we find that building products is not a huge challenge anymore compared to the times which 20 years back or 10 years back. So now the products are created swiftly in terms of the small iterations, and also like not only uh, building the existing product features, but then some products can also be used as part of your extension of your own product. So it is not like you need to build from the scratch. There are plug and play pieces which we can use these days very easily. So from the product development point of view, the abstractions have been maturing a lot these days, and uh, this puzzle is getting solved day by day in a very swift way. Uh, at the same time, these challenges which we are talking about continue to remain there. So the innovative business ideas, uh, even though we are building something from the product development standpoint, but are we building the right thing? So that continues to have a challenge for us. Also, as we are building the product, then are we agile enough to adapt swiftly and with ease to changing customer needs or customer behavior? So if we generally talk about this agile software development, it is not just about the frameworks which we generally talk about like Scrum or Kanban, but here we are talking about the basic conceptual idea of the agility, which is about ability to move swiftly and with ease towards a continuously changing needs actually from the customer's behavior standpoint. So, so from the innovative uh, business ideas point of view, that's where we generally look for disruptive innovations and uh, basically as well as I talked about, this is about agility. Uh, it may also happen that even though we are building our own our current product, but then at the same time as we innovate, we also need to see where exactly we are, and then so, after a period of time, it may happen that the product we are having currently uh, it becomes obsolete, and instead of somebody else killing your own product, you may want to kill your own product, which basically has happened in many cases, like in case of iPod versus iPhone for Apple. So instead of having the attachment with your own product continuously, we need to see what are the consumer problems which are evolving day by day. So, as we talk about these things, let's try to see. Uh, I mean, do we get few solutions from the agile development standpoint? Uh, so if we see, then uh, from the agile software development standpoint, what generally it has been focusing upon is, are we doing the right thing? uh, and doing it in a right fashion. So that's where the idea of the efficiency, quality, speed, and cost comes into the picture. And from that standpoint, it has provided a lot of significant benefits to the people in the recent years. Uh, and and that's where the if we talk about the efficiency piece of the product development cycle, then generally what we look for is like as we start from the request to the which request which is coming for the product, and till the time it gets deployment, we generally try to see uh, we generally try to look at it from the value stream mapping perspective. And we should, with the value stream mapping perspective, what we generally see is what are the different pieces which are there along in the whole value stream, and then what exactly is taking a long period of time, where the bottleneck is, and then based on that, we try to optimize that particular piece. So in this case of in this example of the value stream mapping, uh, you may see that the requirement may be coming, getting approval, getting signed off, and then uh, analysis, design, review, code, and testing is done, and then deployment. But then as we identify where exactly the problem is, then we may try to identify that bottleneck and try to fix that. So this isn't just a one piece of example of the value stream mapping, but that can happen in any kind of uh, value stream. This is a kind of technological value stream, but it can be operational value stream also. So in that context, we identify where exactly the bottlenecks are. Uh, First of all, laying down the different pieces of the value stream, and then try to see uh, the problems and then fix them. So this is one way we try to make things efficient. Sometimes in this whole thing, we may not be touching anything. We just may be improving the process. There may not be any code changes. So the efficiency may be increasing in terms of the process improvements. But then in some cases, it may happen that there is a change in terms of the product development cycle as well. In case of so as I talked about that, we can improve the processes, but then sometimes it may happen that IT becomes the bottleneck, and then that's where exactly we try to shorten the feedback loop through improving different factors. Like we try to improve the deployment frequencies. So instead of deploying to the production once in a while, then you're deploying uh, multiple times in a week or in a day. So that is where the continuous deployment idea comes into picture. Uh, and the whole idea of this is that we want to get to the customer as soon as possible, because that's where the actual feedback really comes from. Uh, and anything which is remaining with you as a code base it can be considered as inventory. So what we want to do is we want to move to the customer as soon as possible and try to gather the feedback from there. And that's where the idea is to do the deployment on a continuous basis or multiple times in a week or in a day. Another point which is important over here is that as we have the smaller increments which are moving to the production, it also means that we have the less, uh, I mean, less amount of risk. So generally, in case the delta is huge, then the so is a risk. And in this case, in case we have the delta is small, then in that case, the risk is also becomes small when it goes to this production. So that is one thing which generally becomes very useful. Second thing is we want to reduce the time it takes to move to the production against for example, the request comes, and then after that we start making the changes to that, and till the time that is in progress, and it is moved to the production, then we want to reduce that time as well. So these are the two things which are basically helping us trying to move towards the production as soon as possible. But at the same time, we want to make sure that it doesn't come along with the risk. It doesn't mean that we are moving anything and everything to the production, and then it is causing a lot of defects. And that is where these rest of the two metrics come into picture, which is about time to restore the services. In case there is a problem and it goes down, then how much time we take to restore the services. And the second thing is the change failure rate. So how many incidents happen and in our production cycle, and are we reducing them further or not? So all these things basically balances out. So one is you are trying to move to the production as soon as early as you can. And at the same time you are trying to reduce the risk as well. So these things really balances out, and generally help in reducing the feedback loop from the customer standpoint. So these things, as I said, are from the efficiency point of view, and that's where the agile software development really helps. But then the next part is like, what about the doing the right thing? So what do we need to do in that case? And that is really important thing actually, because you can build anything, but then if it is not the right thing, then it may be wasting a lot of money and resources. So this is where there are some quotes which are pretty useful. So one is there is surely nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency, which should not be done at all. Uh, so this is from Peter Drucker. And then another part is from the Bill Gates is about like uh, the first rule of any technology used in the business is that automation applied to an efficient operation will magnify the efficiency. But the second part is also important, that the automation applied to an inefficient operation will magnify the inefficiency. So automation may not be the answer for everything, but it is important that it is really happening in the right direction or not. So when we look for understanding, are we doing the right thing, then let's try to see like what generally we may be doing. So one is we interact with the customers. We may be, and then sometimes it may happen that we are looking for what exactly they want, and maybe we want to build based on that. So there are two ways to it. One is like we are trying to see what their problems are, and another is we are trying to see what they are looking for actually, or what kind of solutions they are looking for. And there is a kind of important distinction in that. Uh, so let's try to see from that perspective. So one is, uh, I mean, this is from the Bill Gates. So sorry, from Steve Jobs. So it is really hard to design products by focus groups. A lot of times people don't know what they really want until you show it to them. And second similar quote is also from Henry Ford, which is about if I had asked what they wanted, uh, that they would have said faster horses. So that is in the context of building the cars. So now, if you see that in case we are looking for while having discussions with the customers, sorry, with the users, in case we are looking for like what kind of uh, what they are looking for, generally they don't really know. Only thing which may be really evident is what kind of problems or challenges they are facing. In terms of solutioning, that comes uh, uh, to the product teams to come out with the solutions. So this is one point from where we are gathering the feedback and trying to understand like what the problems are. The second thing which generally happens is like uh, speaking to the stakeholders, understanding from their conversations what they really want, and from that also we try to get a lot of feedback. And sometimes it may happen to based on the loudest mouth in the large organization sometimes, but there may be other scientific methods also which are based on the business value, time criticality, and also the size of the work which needs to be done. So in case the size of the work is large, then the prioritization may be lower. So there are such these kind of ways also, like based on which we try to gather the feedback what we want to build next, and then we deliver it uh, through the continuous delivery and continuous deployment cycle. But again, as we build the whole thing, the question remains is like, where is it? I mean, even we get these feedbacks from different directions, and we build something and move it to the production. But then the important thing is where is the customer feedback? And that's another point from the startup point of view, that in a startup, no facts exist inside the building, only opinions. So whatever, based on whatever assumptions we have built something and moved to the production, these are just guesses. So it is important that those guesses needs to be validated as well. And that validation doesn't really happen inside a building because these are just your opinions which may be there. So you need to go out and speak to the users and user groups to understand or have some mechanism to get their feedbacks to understand what they feel about it. So that is so this is so no facts exist inside the building, no only opinions, and then go get outside of the building. So that is the quote from Steve Blank. So let's try to see how to gather the feedback. So generally, we do a lot of usability testing. So what may happen is that after we build something, then we can gather the some user groups and ask them to assess and ask them to basically use our product based on their use cases, and we try to see what kind of problems they are facing while doing that. And based on that, we make the adjustments to our products. So that is where the usability testing comes into the picture. And then this is, I mean, we have A/B heat maps, Google Analytics, and the A/B testing. So all these feedbacks also comes to the picture. But if you try to analyze all of them, then you may realize that they happen after the after something has already been deployed into the production. So sometimes we may what we want to do is like we want to assess something before it even goes to the productions. So we will see next what else we can do as well before even going to the production. Uh, we will come to that, but before that, I just wanted to focus on this point, which is about uh, in in the in this whole thing, like while going to the production and gathering the feedback from there. We also want to make sure that this feedback cycle could be reduced as much as we can. And let's try to see how it can be done. So generally, if you see that uh, we have certain requirements, and based on that, we make a release, and in between, there may be certain development and quality assurance, which generally happen. So what may happen is that the learning generally happens over here and some learning over there. So most of the learning really happens when something gets into the hand of the user, and rest of the time, the very little learning could be there. So what we want to do is we want to reduce this time where the learning is very less, and that's where in order to reduce that, that's where we come with the idea of the continuous deployment. We may be using the uh, stream programming practices and continuous deployment ideas to reduce this whole cycle and test automation. And based on that, we may get to the production as early as we can. So, uh, so the next point is like we want to get this feedback a little early and in a more capital efficient way. Uh, and how to do that basically. So that's where the idea of lean startup approach comes into picture, where we want to get this early feedback, and but we want to also don't want to invest a lot of money in buildings stuff actually, and then we want to get that feedback. And that's where the lean startup approach basically comes into picture. So lean startup approach uh, came out with the failure of Eric Ries. So there were a lot of failures while he was working on his startup of InView, and uh, while doing that, uh, he implemented certain ideas from the uh, startup owner's manual book from Steve Blank. There were certain ideas from the lean software development and extreme programming and Kanban. And based on the failures of and the learning of in his startup, basically, Eric Ries we came out with certain ideas which basically become the foundation of the lean startup movement. So if you look at what this lean startup is all about, so the important thing over here is that it is a capital efficient method for discovering and building products and services that people love. And how we can have a capital efficient method. So that can happen when we have a more disciplined and scientific approach. So if we are disciplined and very scientific, and based on that, we can have more capital efficient approach. Uh, so sometimes it may happen that uh, in order to understand whether certain thing is really needed or not, uh, we may not even need to build something. So we'll see some examples of that. So so we maybe one of the thing which is about which is an idea of the MVP is minimum viable product. And this minimum viable product is the uh, smallest possible thing that we can build, which will help us to learn if our hypothesis is true. Uh, and in this case, like if you see that uh, I mean there are good features. If you look at the minimum viable thing, then there may be the minimal aspects of a product which we want to go to the production, and then trying to see how whether our idea is any good or not. So that is what we generally look at from the minimum viable product point of view. So one example we will be discussing over here is, just a moment. So this is an example where a startup came up with an idea that we want to build a product which basically takes the social networking feature, and then like for example, have a Facebook, and then we want to make sure that in case our friends is buying something, for example, uh, like for example, I'm buying a washing machine, then some other people might have also bought a washing machine. So in case they share that particular feed on the social network, that may influence uh, my purchasing capacity actually, or my purchasing thought process. And based on that idea, some people came out with an idea that, okay, we need to mix both of these things together, and we can build a startup based on that. So for so one idea was that is you could build the whole product and basically spend a lot of time and money in building that, and then you find that this is not working. Another idea which they thought about is to basically hire a grease monkey developer uh, who could who could basically uh, just make the changes in a Facebook feed of individual user on a desktop. So basically, for example, if I am a user, then I should be able, based on uh, the people I have uh, in my account, there will be some dummy feeds which will be coming based on those purchases, and they are specific only for my current browser session. So that could be done pretty quickly for a user. And then what they did was they hired some people who could just test this idea. So they asked them, like, we have come up with a new idea which may be pretty good for you, and we want to test it out. So when they asked those people to test it out, then people got the feedback that even though I used to come for the social network for chatting to my friends and families, but now this uh, e-commerce side is really annoying me. Actually, I don't really like it, and they basically abandoned. So they didn't really like it to those users. So with that uh, feedback, these people really went to the venture capitalist and then said them that uh, we have good news and bad news for you. And the good news is that we invalidated the idea. And then the good news is that we can, and the good news is that then we can basically focus on some other important idea to work upon. So what you basically see over here is that uh, they, instead of spending a lot of money, they with very small capital, they invalidated their idea uh, instead of and that saved a lot of money for their investors. So similar thing basically can be done in the existing product development cycle as well. When where instead because a new feature may be going with a idea and guess. So instead of basically spending a lot of money, we can identify an approach with which we can basically we can test the idea in a more capital efficient way. There is another idea of the fake door, and fake door idea is also being used in the lean startup world. So in this idea, the goal is that instead of providing the whole baked feature, what you do is you provide the uh, fake representation of it. So one another example which I will basically talk about is uh, for one startup, what they thought about was that we want to have a social networking feature for us actually, and uh, and so that will be coming to our product pages. So they wanted to build that, but they were not really sure that whether the feature will be good for them or not. So what they did was they built a fake feature and moved that to for the in the continuous deployment, and basically showed it to only for first 100 users. As they clicked on that feature, then they realized that, uh, as they clicked on that, uh, the message was that we are still working on this feature, and uh, are you really interested on in this feature or not? So they, based on that feature and feedback, uh, they could realize whether this feature will be useful for them or not. So this is another idea basically which could be pretty useful from the fake door point of view. While are doing these tests uh, from the lean startup point of view, it is important that we also do the measurements of our hypothesis and experimentations. Based on that measurements, we actually come to know whether our hypothesis is any good or not. And that is where we basically come to know with the validated learning. So, uh, so based on each hypothesis we may be having, we may be defining how to measure the success of it. And as we start measuring that, it may happen that we come with the learning, and in case it is still not really working, then basically we start with the same build, measure, learn cycle actually. So we come with a we start with a build, and then we measure and then learn. So if you see that there is a change in terms of the, I mean, if you look at the Agile Software Development Board, generally we have the idea of the to do, doing, and done. But in the case of the lean startup world, we have the idea of the validated column as well. So done is not just that it has moved to the production. Uh, it it has the idea of the validations as well, that whatever hypothesis we had from the business standpoint, whether it is working or not. In case the hypothesis is not really working, then we again go into the build, measure, learn cycle actually from the lean startup point of view, and then and then start iterating the approach. So if we see the differences in terms of the agile and the lean startup, so generally here in the agile software development, the accepted is done. In the case of the lean startup, it is validated learning is the new done. If we talk about the agile, then full-blown feature delivered in the production is the definition of done here. And in case if we look at from the lean startup point of view, then capital efficient way to assess the feature is even needed is very important. We have the idea of the user story in agile software development, but we look for hypothesis in the lean startup world. And we have the concept of the backlogs instead of in agile, and instead of that, in lean startup world, it is the to learns list. Based on the to learn list, we have the concept of the build, measure, learn cycle instead of a sprint. We just don't look for the customer feedback in lean startup. We look for the customer validation, whether based on the matrices which may be coming as part of deployment cycle. We started with the continuous integration in Agile, but then we basically moved. We continue to move with the continuous deployment in the lean startup world. And as we see that we have the idea of the on-site customer here in the Agile software development, the idea here is to get outside the building and then basically speak to the customers and users and get their feedbacks uh, and basically make the changes along with that actually. So so that is my presentation. Actually, I mean, sorry about that. There were some problems I was having actually, but any questions from your side?
Thanks very much. Can you lower your screen and we'll try to have a conversation about what's going on? Yeah. So does anybody have any questions on the top of their mind at the moment?
I have a quick comment and
Yeah.
question. I just find it so fascinating, uh, the whole issue of determining the demand in advance for your product. And I love that quote by Henry Ford about they would have just wanted faster horses, which is so true. And we find ourselves really dealing with that because we're dealing with schools and teachers, and our audience or our customers are so busy doing what they're doing already. And we're looking in from the outside, and we do have educators on our team, and we're all former educators, but it's like we have this clarity where we can see a technology that would really help, but they have no bandwidth at all to take on something new, nor do they have budgets a lot of times. So it's a very complicated conversation to start and to just forge out, especially without a large marketing budget. So my question would be, when you're dealing with with a lot of barriers to entry, but you can see that you have a product that could scale up enormously if you could just get it through. What are the best ways to do that in a lean model? How do you reach out in a lean model and sort of push this idea into these really high friction markets?
Well, let me put a little bit of spin on that before
Yeah,
Shrikant answers.
yeah,
Yeah.
The first question is, I have an app.
right,
Who's the customer? So the customer and the user are not necessarily the same, and that's especially true inside education. And
right,
so the first question is, will the users use it, right? And so you have to find ways to get people to engage in it, right? And if there is zero available time, then it doesn't matter if it's really great. They're not going to use it. And so there may be a perfectly good thing that if you could change the underlying structure of schools, it would be so much better. But you can't, in the moment, change the structure of the schools. And so that's probably a pathway that doesn't work. You have to find another market. But if you have a customer where the customer, could it be we tell the education app story, the 13-year-old girl using a STEM education app. Is the girl the customer? Is the parents the
right,
customer? Are the grandparents the customers? The teacher, the principal, the school district, the nonprofit that cares about STEM for girls, the federal education group, right? I mean, there's 15 different possible customers, and there are likely other possible users in that scenario. And so
right,
doing the lean experiments against each of those to see who's willing to move now because they have a existential need to move now is
right.
the frame. Shrikant, do you want to address that question?
Yeah, actually, I think you rightly said, it is important to really identify who actually is the customer because uh, customer and users may be two different things. Who actually may want to pay for solving the problems which may be there in the education world. And while there may be a lot of challenges in terms of the way it has been functioning, so it may be also important to identify uh, those problem areas which may be because sometimes the people are so involved in their problem areas, they don't know, they may not, they may not know the solution. At the same time, they don't have energy to do anything else as well. So if we identify those problem areas, uh, that may inspire us, or we may need to do think innovatively how to solve the problems they may be having actually, and that may basically evolve in something which may be useful for that particular industry actually. So as you start loving the problem, then you may be coming with the innovative solution which may be useful for that particular user group. And there may be people who maybe want to pay for, and they may be customers for that actually. So it is important that if we can identify what is really creating all that chaos actually, and that becomes a interesting idea to identify I mean, scenarios over there.
So remember that the behavior change follows a normal curve. And so the fact that you're looking at teachers to change their behavior, it's not all teachers, it's the early adopters. And I argue it's the early adopters that you have to find. And so even if you have a collection of customers who really will pay you, which is not the 100% of teachers, then of those real customers, only 1 to 2% are the early adopters. And so if you talk to 100 people, you're going to get 1 or 2 as the ones that are responding in the right way that indicate that they're the early adopters. So spending the time to find the early adopters is really a vital first step in that process, right? And it might be that they're inside an experimental school. It might be that they're in a new school. It might be that they're a special group of teachers that were set on a task to improve the scores for the school because they're substandard or whatever the motivator at the school is. It's not the generic teacher. And if you talk to the generic teacher and you get a happy noise, you are probably not talking to a customer. And so you should not be taking advice from people who are not customers. So you have to first qualify them as customers first, which is early adopter customers are people who will pay you now to talk about the problem.
Right.
Not people will pay you for the solution, but people will come to a workshop about how do I move people to reading in new ways, right? And they paid you to come to the workshop. Now you've proven that they have the problem. You've proven that they're willing to pay to solve the problem. Now we can interview them about what behavior changes they'd be willing to make to resolve the problem.
Right. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other thoughts or questions that people have? John Hand. You're on mute.
Yeah, I have a big screen. I can move my mouse.
You're in Founders Institute.
Yeah.
They expect you to like move fast on this question of having an audience.
Yeah, so right now we're working on the minimal viable test prior to the minimal viable product, right? So
I would call it a RAT.
Yeah, I was reading your notes in the chat.
Yep.
And I had a meeting with a client or a colleague who's helping me understand. So Primease it's the combination of 2 words, prime and ease. It's to ease people into the prime of their life. So I'm creating a solution that allows people to put their important information into a virtual online vault that they can access when a loved one passes away.
You recognize that you are addressing a solution.
Right.
So when we're doing the lean startup-y thing and the startup doesn't have revenue, then what we have to be doing is focusing on customer problem fit.
Yeah.
Right.
So that doesn't involve the solution.
Well, that's true. And I wanted to, so for the minimal viable test, I've come up with 22 different questions to ask. Is this something that would benefit you? Because
that's already focused on the solution. Because you're asking, will the solution solve your question? That's step two. The first question is to get the denominator, right? I'm always in my sales funnel doing a conversion from the group I talked to versus the group that said yes, right? I'm measuring that. So the core question is, who are the people that are early adopters that have the problem, customer problem fit? That gives you the denominator. Then I can say, would my solution help you? And now I get a number that's a real number between the number of yeses and the number of people in the denominator. But if I ask random people, and anybody who's a teacher is a random person, I just multiplied the noise by factors of 1,000, maybe 100 million, right? And so I need to qualify the person as a customer first. And then I can ask the question, do you like my solution? So the first question is customer problem fit, which are the two corners of the lean canvas. And out of that comes your competitive matrix and the deficiency in the competitive landscape, right? Which is where you think you are at. And then you want the customers to say, hey, my world is not good because of this deficiency. And now you know you've got a problem that they care about. And now you can ask the question, which is step two, problem solution fit, right? And now you get a conversion rate that has meaning, right? And now you can then go to step three, which is at what price are you willing to engage in this thing? And in what words will you respond to my advertising in this thing? So I now find the channel for the submarket that will turn into cash. And then we can pretend that we're at product market fit. We need to do the work to get product market fit, right? So we're just doing the walkthrough of the Steve Blank 4 steps to the epiphany that Shrikant started with. Yeah. But everybody seems to start with, I have the thing. I now need to hit a step 4 scale. And all I need to do is to talk to people about my thing. And I will evolve my thing into the right process by asking them, does this solve your problem? Does this solve your problem? And they're still talking to the 10,000 people who are not customers, which then gives you random answers.
Yeah, that's a good point. I did note something that you mentioned a little earlier, and that the customer and the user are often different people. And that's going to be true of my solution as well, because it's almost like an insurance policy. The people that benefit from the insurance policy are the benefactors, not the person who owns the insurance policy, right?
Yep.
And it's going to be the same basic model for what I'm trying to do. And so that was an interesting thing.
Yep. So, the execution of those experiments is really important. And the thing that Shrikant was pointing at is really important. But it's also really important to step back earlier in the process and make sure that your foundation is asking the questions of the right people. And so we do not know what language they use, what words they use to describe their problem if we have not been the ones experiencing the problem, right? And even if we are the ones experiencing the problem, it might be that we're off in a side group that's not the larger group that we want to address. And so just because we're the ones that have the problem doesn't mean that we're in the right space for running the experiments. Now, we did a thing called the MILVAL-CHAL, the $1 Million Valuation Challenge, which was run by Adam Burke, which was, I will invest $10,000 into your company at $1 million valuation if you do 100 customer interviews. And we found that that produced absolute garbage. And there was no relationship between those interviews and anything related to business, because they didn't structure the experiments properly. So let me ask Shrikant, how do I structure my experiments in a meaningful way that would get someone like John to find the audience that is the right audience to ask then the second question, right? Would it help you to do this, right? What's the structure of that experiment, right?
I mean, in terms of the, first of all, I think it will be important to uh, define the problem statement, and based on the problem statement, you may be coming with the kind of hypothesis that in case I I mean, there may be multiple of solutions, and in case there may be some sort of divergence, and then divergence of those solutions, and then based on those divergence, there may be multiple solutions, and then you identify that this have a convergence. That means like if two or three hypothesis you may be having, uh, which based on which you may say that okay, these are the ones which may basically help that particular problem. And with that hypothesis, you basically create a MVP, and that MVP doesn't have to be really build up solution. It can be just to validate. It doesn't have to be a full-fledged solution. So uh, based on that hypothesis and that MVP, you may want to validate whether your hypothesis is true and whether it's solving the problems that customers is having or users are having.
So I
And
wanna
yeah,
sort of press in on this a second.
yeah,
The first thing is nobody knows what a hypothesis is and how to construct it, right? So John's hypothesis is that when people die, all of the information about them is a piece of crap, and the survivors then spend hours and hours and tens of thousands of dollars trying to reconstruct things that ought to have easily been put in a safe place. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, I talked to a person yesterday or
So
last week. 4 years it took. 4 years.
right. So that hypothesis is that there is a customer that will pay him to avoid that pain. It is not
yeah,
the person who has to fill out the form. It is the children, right?
Right.
Like if you don't know you're the executor and your parent dies, all of a sudden you got a mess, and hallelujah. So he needs to build a lean canvas as a methodology
yeah,
of who is the customer and what is their problem, right? So the hypothesis is a customer problem fit statement. I believe that the children of parents in this group have the problem of they're going to have a mess when their parent dies. That's the hypothesis. Is that
yeah,
correct, John?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So what test can you run that will find you a customer that's in that group? And it's not building an MVP for the product. It's running a test on that question. So I would argue that if you do a Zoom meeting and you say, we're going to talk about horror stories of how long it took you to get your inheritance on Zoom, and you built a little meetup group and you ran that and you saw who came to that, and then you ran a second Zoom meeting for money that went into a little more details about how not to have that horror thing, right? Here's what you could do by hand to do that. And you measured the distance between when you sent out a note, what percentage of people came in from that channel, and then measured the number of people from the first Zoom meeting that completed it, that come to the paid meeting in the second one. You now have a real set of numbers where you have a ratio that is meaningful, right? Of the 25 people that came to the first one, 4 people came to the second one. Now I have data, right? And now that I have data, I've actually measured something that approximates my hypothesis. It has nothing to do with building code.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
just
Doesn't
identifying the
have to be.
client. So when he says MVP, it's the RAT, the smallest, the riskiest assumption test. Are there customers that are willing to pay to talk about this problem? Just that.
Right.
And you do 1,000 of those aimed at, 100 at a time to find the submarket where they move, and whether it's a Facebook channel or or a local senior or housing thing, or the local Schwab lobby, whatever your channel is to find the audience, right? Then measure the people coming in, try to find what the words are they use, and then see if they go to the second step. Now you've validated a submarket. Now that I validated the submarket and I've got those 4 people, then I interview them. First, I interview them. What are your top 3 problems, right? And what keeps you up at night around your parents and their health and everything? And then you say, if I had something that was like this, would you pay me now to be in line for that product? Not, would you pay me? Right?
Absolutely.
Sometime in the future, abstractly, because that causes you to get a lot of people to say, yeah, that's a great idea. I pay for that. And 98% of those people are not customers now and will not be customer for a while, right?
They're just
So where are your early adopters that are like, oh my God, I have to have this right now because I'm in trouble, right? So I want to press in on that question for the early part. A lot of what Shrikant talked about is at the point where you're at or near product market fit. A lot of that cleaning of the product and the engagement in the MVP work is important. But you need to move it all the way back to the beginning and run the experiments and get data at the beginning. And when you do that, you reduce the risk of your company by a factor of 4 at least. And in the process, ought to cut your development time by 75%, ought to be able to cut your costs by 75%, maybe even more, right?
Yeah, that's the challenge. Right now I'm a single entrepreneur, and just being able to show traction. And this sounds like a great way to do that is to run these tests, get the denominator, as you call it, and then take it from there.
So I believe that if you and a co-founder spend 3 months of serious time on this question, you can get to $10,000 in revenue for those Zoomy meetings,
right,
in 3 months. And then that, in my mind, gets you to a yes or no. Because if I can't figure out how to get to $10,000 of people who care about talking about the product or the problem, talking about the problem, I have no way of building my scale later because I don't have relationships with the channels to do that.
right.
So for every hour of building the thing, there's an hour of marketing, sub-market segmentation work to have been done ahead of time that would have built the audience so that when the MVP was done, I say, hey, it's done, and 1,000 people come to try it out. Without that audience, your experiments take years.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really good that's really good feedback. I appreciate it.
Cool. Shrikant, are there more things you want to make sure we touch base with this group of people?
Yeah, I think that is what actually just wanted to basically touch base that I mean some in this group there are many people who are basically building the startups, but then there may be people as well who already have the product, and then it becomes very important to make sure that we know what new feature we need to build, and instead of just I mean having a guess about it, we want to make sure that there is a capital efficient way to identify are we getting into the right direction or not, and continuously getting the feedback, having those measurements uh, based on the matrices, and to see whether we are moving into the right direction or not. So that becomes pretty useful as we start working with this methodology, actually.
Yeah. And so the assumption in Agile is that we have a subject matter expert. And the mistake that many enterprises make is that they substitute a subject matter expert with a local employee who's supposed to know, but is not really a customer and does not
absolutely.
actually run customer
Yeah.
development experiments, and so is basically pulling answers out of some random space rather than actually knowing the customer needs and their subtleties. And so in Lean Startup, we need to actually talk to real customers outside of our context, in their context. Totally important.
And it may also happen that there may be multiple ways to gather the feedback. So a lot of feedbacks may be coming through our analytics, through our different channels to see based on how people are reacting to what we are building actually, apart from interacting to them on face-to-face basis. So all these feedbacks and measurements needs to be used to decide to make sure that are we moving to the right direction or not. Because sometimes it may happen that we may be building a lot of stuff, but those features are not really used by anyone.
Okay, that's good. Any other questions that people want to bring up? All right. Well, thank you. We're running these workshops on a regular basis. I put into the chat both the European and the US focused workshop things. We also do a Seattle Startups Open Coffee meetup where we engage with random discussions of startup-y things on Tuesdays. Glad to hear any problems you're having with either your startup or your angel investing and trying to build resources to help you do that. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
This will go on to our YouTube channel.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
John, really quick, I was going to
Thank you
ask,
very much.
is anybody working